I feel like as big as gaming is in today's world, we're quick to forget that it's relatively a new thing in the grand scheme of history. Video games weren't really a thing that existed to people until Pong in the 1970s, and for perspective, Nintendo was established in 1889 as a trading card company, which is insane to think about. While video games have made incredible strides to become the biggest media format in the world today, the state of the industry and gaming itself felt veiled and hidden in its infancy and throughout much of its adolescence. It needed a platform, a common ground, a stage to showcase what gaming is doing, and more importantly, what gaming could be as it matured and curated more grandiose experiences for people to get into. And E3 was that stage. The Electronic Entertainment Expo was a trade show designed for the video games industry that began on May 11th, 1995, breaking out of the structures of events like CES that didn't give them the respect to showcase their stuff. Back in the early 90s on CES show floors, you would have to look past the big tech vendors, then past camera companies, then past like 6 more tech sub-industries, and then behind the adult film vendors in the way back, you'd find the video game booths like Sega. That's like getting to your bus home from school and the driver told you your assigned seat is in the last row and you gotta sit with your body halfway out in the aisle. Well, eventually the video game scene outgrew that seat and decided it was time to break out and create their own program to focus on what video games were cooking up. And from that point on, gaming had a linchpin that they could depend on to broadcast the best and brightest of what was coming from their part of the tech and entertainment world to the rest of it. Out the gate, it locked in 40,000 attendees of the industry's brightest for the LA Convention Center and became an instant success. Despite a temporary location shift in the mid-90s, E3 was the place to be, and with every coming summer, it became more essential viewing for gamers around the world, a pilgrimage for the privileged and lucky, and the pinnacle of gaming showcases in the industry. Until it started not to be. As we all know at this point, and probably have known for some time, E3 is currently the event that's showing off Anthem DLC and brand new trailers for Scalebound and Star Wars 1313. Ergo, it's dead in the dirt. Looking at how the event went from a gaming cornerstone to a gaming headstone, I can pick out 4 main reasons why E3 didn't really last in the current day and age. First and foremost, the ESA, or E3's organizing committee, made some big oversights that really shot themselves in the foot in the grand scheme of things. If I could boil it down to just 2 here, the first would definitely be how they tried to price out events for groups trying to get in. For starters, E3 would reportedly charge out the ass for companies to secure a place in the festivities of the event. Whether it be a booth on the show floor, a time slot on the main stages for keynote presentations, and even membership dues. And those fees were getting bumped up year over year, so if you wanted to be seen on the main stage, you had to run those pockets. Mix that in the pot with the ESA opening the floodgates to the public for some extra coin and access, and questions were asked on how viable the event would be for gaming companies looking to get involved. The second out of those 2 oversights would be the E3 data leak of 2019. You know, the minor security mishap that revealed personal info of over 6,000 press and social media personalities to the entire internet. So not the best way to encourage people to sign up for an incoming E3. Both the leak and the rising cost of attendance chipped at the credibility and allure of the event and eventually added into its downfall. The second major reason why E3 failed was, well, that one virus. The Rona was putting every public event on the face of the planet through a flaming table once it touched down. And it cut right through the 2020 E3 plans in place to expand the event that would have lines longer than the route to King Kai's crib. From that point, 2021 ended up going all digital, and there was hardly any footing for E3 to be in person, which meant that any earning potential from in-person operations to keep E3 afloat was down the drain. And at almost the same time that E3 got tripped up due to the Rona, the third reason E3 isn't here today appeared out of the wild grass: Jeff Keighley and the Summer Game Fest. I gotta start off by saying kudos to Jeff Keighley. He was a longtime vet in the industry already and had supported a lot of the programming for E3 over the years. But with the ESA trying to infuse Disney World-like fast passes and a bunch of format changes, Keighley wasn't comfortable with the direction and branched out to make his own alternative. The Game Awards creator pulled all of his contacts and resources together to build a full-fledged platform that was direct competition to E3, but much more nimble in its delivery, being digital focused than previous iterations of its event counterpart. The lyrics of his fellow Canadian Aubrey Graham definitely had to be in his head, because Jeff didn't care who did it first, it was about who's doing it right. And it didn't take long for a notable number of devs and companies to be on board with Summer Game Fest, which saw the event quickly take the slot E3 once held. I mean, I personally found it just hilarious how Jeff turned into the biggest player hater of the year by tweeting and doing the thug shake over E3's grave when they announced cancellations. It felt like he was taking it more personally than Michael Jordan. As soon as E3 was on his deathbed online, he told his whole social media team,
"We will be there. PSG, we will be there."
Summer Game Fest was more direct, better organized, and filled the gap so effectively that E3 was never able to get back in. The last reason that E3 is 6 feet under right now is because they underestimated how the industry could move past them. Now this checks out as a classic example of the Kodak effect in full swing. For context, the Kodak effect is a phenomenon where a company fails to acknowledge and understand the importance of a strategic change, which is typically followed by disastrous consequences. You can Google it further if you like, but to put it in a nutshell, if you don't adapt, you perish. A lot of the ESA's actions led me to believe that they thought E3 was too big to fail, that it was such a staple in gaming presentation and broadcasting to the world that it would only cement its position as time went on. However, as almost everything does, gaming grew and the landscape changed. If you really trace it back, E3 was marked for death or obsolescence almost a decade ago when the Nintendo Direct made its debut. This was the first major instance where a gaming company realized they had the means and incentive to do their own thing in-house. There's not only money risk in heading to E3, but presentation risk with things potentially going wrong on stage or info getting leaked through multiple parties having eyes at the content you're bringing to a keynote. Knowing this, Nintendo was the first to jump on an in-house presentation with Direct and Nintendo Treehouse, and they got clowned at first. But little did we know that they kicked off a big domino effect in how the gaming industry would change. And slowly but surely, the rest followed suit. EA Play got established in 2016, Sony refused to attend E3 in 2019 and jump-started State of Plays and PlayStation showcases. Then a slew of major companies began moving to make their own isolated events outside of E3. And why wouldn't they? Technology advanced far enough to where it was feasible for companies to handle their own presentation, the cost of production started to really outweigh the cost of booking a slot at E3, and the video game industry grew so much that a middleman for showing off the latest with people's favorite gaming brands and developers became surplus to requirements. It was becoming evident to everyone, well, everyone except the ESA. From the mistakes in their operation, to global pandemics, to a determined Canadian, and failure to recognize strategic changes, E3 became another victim of the Kodak effect. They couldn't adapt, so they died. Twice. Not like Sekiro, no. The simple fact is this: E3 was never going to pan out in today's marketplace. The show is dead and gone like a Justin Timberlake song. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. However, the spirit of E3 season will always remain in the video game industry. The footprint it left as the dwelling of so many legendary moments in gaming, the conduit of conversation and memories that people will hold for years, will never be forgotten. I wouldn't, and millions of people wouldn't have some of the most enjoyable moments in gaming if E3 wasn't there to spawn them. Reggie telling Miyamoto in the crowd that his body was ready. Solid Snake getting his introduction to the Smash Bros. Roster. People losing their minds over Final Fantasy VII Remake. Me getting choked up when I saw Kingdom Hearts 3 actually have some proof of existence. Those moments never come to pass if it wasn't for the E3 stage. It may not pop up with a live stream or in-person event ever again, but that early part of the summer where game announcements come around, that'll always be E3 season, and no one can remove that legacy from history. It's been a fun ride, and we're thankful for the service, but we have fully seen the end of an electronic era.